Hi, I'm Crystal. Today we're going to talk about stencils, and I'm going to start out with some regular craft stencils. This is one meant for card making from the Crafter's Workshop. Then I have one that I think is geared more towards mixed media. I believe this one is from Temu. It's a little bit larger in scale and in size. Then next we have a stencil that's sold primarily for home decor. This one has butterflies on it. But pretty much anything that has holes in it can be a stencil. So next I have a part of a box that originally held socks. And I've used a punch to punch some butterfly shaped holes in this plastic packaging. And that is now a stencil. And here next I have a cardboard box, and I have run that through my die cut machine with a die, and I've just taped up the parts where I didn't want the holes. This looks like a grape nuts box, and now this grape nuts box is a stencil. And last I have a silicone trivet. It's got holes in it. That's a stencil. So there are also a bunch of different tools that you can use to apply mediums through a stencil. So let's take a look at a couple of those. We've got a silicone face mask applicator, a makeup brush, and a makeup sponge. These are all pretty readily available, including at the dollar store, and they work great. This silicone face mask applicator I really like because stuff just comes right off that silicone blade, so anytime you're working with something thicker. And then the makeup brush and sponge are great for ink. But of course there are some other options. If you're working with a paste, you can use a spatula. This is a silicone spatula, and again that material just sheds anything. And this is a basting brush, which is good for something more liquid. And of course, look around you for whatever you have. There are also some more traditional tools like a palette knife. This is a American Crafts palette knife, so meant for crafts. And there are ink blending tools as well that are familiar. So you don't have to use an applicator tool. You can also use sprays. So here's a spray through that cardboard stencil. And even though the cardboard stencil is going to absorb some ink, it's reusable several times. So no rule says you have to discard it just because it's stained. Now with the silicone trivet, the ink spray is going to work quite well. What's different between the silicone trivet and the cardboard box is that the cardboard box is going to absorb what you've put on top, but the silicone trivet, that's just going to sit on there. It's beading up. So in addition to spraying through that trivet, I can also take a piece of plain paper and put the trivet down on it. This would work with any plastic stencil as well, but you can see the spray through, and then we can see the print that we make with this thing that I'm using as a stencil. So double use. Then of course we can go on instead of just using sprays, and we can apply other mediums. Here I'm using the silicone face mask applicator to apply some thick body acrylic paint. Might not have been the best choice for this little fine detail on the butterfly, but it works pretty well. And of course that plastic homemade stencil is going to be reusable almost infinitely because the paint is not going to interfere with reuse. And of course, in the vein of not using any applicator at all, you can also use drawing tools through a stencil. Here I'm using water-based markers to draw through selectively through some parts of this stencil. Doesn't have to be a brush marker. It could be any fine tip marker, could be a Sharpie, could be a colored pencil, could be a watercolor pencil. Almost any drawing tool is going to be effective in a similar vein. I do like the brush tip markers for this because it gives you kind of a watercolory look. And I could never be this precise with a paintbrush, ever, ever, ever. But with a stencil, you can certainly selectively use your stencil and add some images and then use a water brush to give it a watercolor look, even though you've not created that image yourself. So I'm going to just keep going with a few more images here and then get out my water brush. Now we're going to do a more traditional application. We've got the stencil. I've got out my makeup brushes. These have a couple of color-coded handles, but of course any makeup brush is going to work. And then I'm going to use those makeup brushes to apply ink through the stencil. Now, one of the reasons why I like stencils, besides there being such an inexpensive crafting tool, is you've got this ability to blend colors in a way that you don't necessarily have with a stamp. So we saw that with the markers through the stencil, but also with ink blending through a stencil, I can use multiple colors through the stencil, blending them effortlessly into multiple shades. And I think it gives you a really nice output when you get to the end of the process. So I'm using yellow and red, but at the end, of course, I've got yellow, red, and a little bit of coral where the two colors overlap. So such a quick, easy process. I think it leads to a great outcome, whether you're doing a mixed media product or a card. And let's take a look at some of our stenciled output and then some finished projects. So here we've got that leaf stencil along with the butterfly I added from the home decor stencil. This is from the trivet spraying through, the trivet stamping down through our markers through the stencil, and we've also got the butterflies. I took those stenciled items as well as the more traditional stenciled item, and I made 2 cards and a little bit of an art journal page. I think these turned out really great and certainly quick and easy to do these projects. I hope that you will give stenciling a try. Look around you for something with a hole in it, because anything with a hole can be a stencil. Thanks for joining me today.